Good morning, everyone. Let's start a bit international. Yesterday, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was in intensive care after coronavirus symptoms worsened. That didn't sound good. This morning, CTV News was reporting UK Prime Minister PM Boris Johnson spends night in the ICU intensive care unit, not on a ventilator. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson spent the night in the intensive care unit of a London hospital with the new coronavirus, but is not on a ventilator, a senior government minister said Tuesday as pressure grew on the government to release more details of Johnson's condition. Johnson was admitted to St. Thomas's Hospital late Sunday, 10 days after he was diagnosed with COVID-19, the first major world leader to be confirmed to have the virus. He was moved to the ICU Monday after his condition deteriorated. Cabinet Minister Michael Gove said Johnson is being given oxygen, but the Prime Minister is not on a ventilator. I'm going to scroll down. Britain has no official post of Deputy Prime Minister, but Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has been designated to take over temporarily. Quote, the government's business will continue, Raab said late Monday. He said Johnson had asked him to deputize for him where needed in driving forward the government's plans to defeat coronavirus. Interesting stuff. And I mean, we'll see where that goes. I wonder what kind of treatment Mr. Johnson's getting. I wonder if he's on hydroxychloroquine. Sorry that I kept saying that wrong earlier this week. Okay, here is Dr. David Jacobs, and he's a conservative person who comments on a lot of things. He's also a doctor, and he says, delayed actions, half measures, and a stubborn unwillingness to correct poor decisions that have been the hallmark of Trudeau's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I agree with him here. Here is yesterday. This is MSN reporting, Canada looking to disinfect used masks. Tam asks they not be thrown away. Canadian hospitals should not throw out used face masks and other protective equipment because public health officials are investigating whether it will be possible to disinfect and reuse them, Canada's public health chief said Sunday. I think that's a bad idea. And isn't it interesting that she's recommending against the use of, or up until yesterday, maybe today, up until today, they were recommending not to use a mask if you were feeling well. But it's okay to reuse healthcare professional masks if you disinfect them. I think that's really not great planning. Again, another misstep by this government, right? Like, this is not something to be bandying about. I think maybe if you have your own respirator with filters, maybe cleaning the filters might be something for your personal respirator. That's a little bit different than reusing masks, right? Like the single-use masks. It would be like, well, I don't know a good compare. Maybe like a jockstrap or something to that effect. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies to think that that's what our healthcare workers would be reduced to. Like, is that the stack of new masks or are those the disinfected ones? How well were they disinfected? You know, like, what's the standard on that? That's right. I've got the shifty fry eyes. Like, nah, I don't think so. Okay. CBC News is reporting April 6th. Canada's top doctor says non-medical masks can help stop the spread of COVID-19. Canada's chief public health officer now says that wearing a non-medical mask can help stop the spread of COVID-19. Dr. Theresa Tam, the top doctor at the Public Health Agency of Canada, said today that Canadians can use non-medical masks in tandem with social distancing measures to limit the transmission of the deadly virus when they go out grocery shopping or at a pharmacy. The recommendation represents an about-face for the public health officer, who until now had resisted the idea of non-healthcare professionals wearing masks. Wearing a non-medical mask is an additional measure that you can take to protect others around you, said Tam, while warning that a non-medical mask doesn't necessarily protect the person wearing it. A non-medical mask can reduce the chance of your respiratory droplets coming into contact with others or landing on surfaces, Tam said. The science is not certain, but we do need to do everything we can, and it seems a sensible thing to do. I scroll down a little bit. Emerging information. Beyond supply concerns, Tam also has questioned the usefulness of masks for the general population in the past. It can sometimes make it worse if the person puts their finger in their eye or touches their face under the mask, Tam said in January during a teleconference with reporters. She had also said wearing a mask could give people a false sense of security and could encourage wearers to relax physical distancing. On March 28th, Tam said most people haven't learned how to use masks and there's no need to use masks for well people. Speaking to reporters on March 30th, Tam said that putting a mask on an asymptomatic person is not beneficial. And here's The CDC on April 1st, April 2nd, CDC recommends wearing a cloth mask whenever you leave home. So Canada's lagging by at least 4 days. 4 days. This was reported yesterday, so the 6th. So 4 days on that. Why the lag? Right? Here's April 2nd. Hydroxychloroquine rated most effective coronavirus treatment, finds poll of doctors, right? I've talked about this. I reported on this when it came out on the 2nd. Here's an LA doctor talking about the effectiveness of this. Here we go.
Saying is you're prescribing it and it is working for COVID-19 patients.
Every patient I prescribed it to has been very, very ill. And within 8 to 12 hours, they were basically symptom free. And so clinically, I am seeing a resolution that mirrors what we saw in the French study and some of the other studies worldwide. But what I am seeing is that people are taking it alone by itself. It's not having efficacy.
Okay. Wow. That is.
Earlier on in the interview, he explains, well, you know what, I'll put it here. He talks about how zinc is needed in order for the virus to be disrupted. I'll cue that up. Hold on a second. Okay, here we go.
Exactly. What we're finding clinically with our patients is that it really only works in conjunction with zinc. So the hydroxychloroquine opens the zinc channel, zinc goes into the cell, it then blocks the replication of the cellular machinery. So it has to be used in conjunction with zinc. We are seeing some clinical responses in that regard. There are people that take it regularly for other disease processes. We have to be cautious and mindful that we don't prescribe it for patients who have COVID that are well. It really should be reserved for people that are really sick in the hospital or at home very sick that need that medication. Otherwise, we're going to blow through our supply for the patients that take it regularly for other disease processes.
But what you're saying is you're prescribing it and it is working for COVID-19 patients.
Every patient I prescribed it to has been very, very ill. And within 8 to 12 hours, they were basically symptom free. And so.
And he references, again, I showed that a little bit more, but he says, you know, the French study, the Brazilian study, there are examples around the world. If you have a drug trial and the drug trial is successful, you give it to the control group. You don't say, well, hold on, the trial's not done. We've got to do another trial. We've got to wait a year. If the trial is successful, it is not ethical to not give it to the control group. The control group is the group that got the placebo, the group that's not on the experimental new medication, right? The group that you can say, see, these people didn't get it and they didn't get well, and these people got the medication and 40% or 50% or 60%. When you have 100% of people getting well, you don't withhold that tested, safe medication. My mom takes this for lupus. Sorry, oversharing. But the thing is, this is a drug that is widely prescribed, right? It is absolutely safe for human trials. And does it have side effects? Yes, of course. All medications have side effects. You've sat there placidly watching the commercial that says side effects include your hair falling out, toenails falling off, and your penis descending, or something weird, right? Like, why would anybody take these medications that are shown on American television, you know, when you're in your all-inclusive resort or whatever? But you understand what I'm saying? If you've watched any kind of American television, you've seen these side effects. So claiming, well, here's Canada's take on things. Here's Canada's take. Okay, National Post is reporting on April 4th. Canada takes cautious approach to unapproved COVID-19 drugs as others prescribed wide use. The malaria drug hydroxychloroquine is a hot item in the United States, embraced by the highest politician in the land and many in the medical community, despite minimal evidence that it helps those stricken by the novel coronavirus. India and Brazil have similarly doubled down on using the drugs to treat the pandemic virus. But it's a different story in Canada, where hydroxychloroquine and other potential COVID-19 medications are being met with more cautious interest than unbridled enthusiasm. Now note, I wanted to play really clearly about the zinc. This doctor says it doesn't work without the zinc. If you just give them hydroxychloroquine and not the zinc is needed to disrupt the process of the, and I'm not a doctor, that's what he said, okay? But the process of the virus replicating, right? That's the key here. And so if it's administered incorrectly and they can point to that and say, see, this study failed, well, that's not great either. Back to this. Different story in Canada, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Canadian researchers are actively involved in several studies of the malaria drug and others, with the federal government spending millions to support them. But in contrast to the FDA, health organizations here have discouraged their use except as part of those clinical trials, studies designed to carefully assess the drug's effectiveness and possible harmful side effects. And some experts warn that widespread use of the outside of studies, which typically includes a control group of patients who don't receive the drug, could make it difficult to even determine whether they work or not. Quote, when people become very ill, ... your impulse, and they can put anything in here, or the person could have said anything that they're removing to shape what they're saying here. Anyway, back to this. When people become very ill, your impulse is to try anything that might help, and that's driven the response in some places, said Dr. Lenora Saxinger, an infectious disease specialist at the University of Alberta. But as people have been wrapping their heads around the data underpinning these drugs, it's pretty thin on the ground. Really? It's pretty thin on the ground? Like, I mean, no, you're just wrong. Like, you're just wrong. And like, there are many doctors who have, there's another doctor in New York, there's another doctor in France, there's another doctor across the world who are having similar results when pairing hydroxychloroquine with azithromycin or zinc. I've heard both. I don't know if there's zinc in azithromycin. Maybe there is, and that's why the azithromycin is included. Maybe it's just an antibiotic that helps make sure that, who knows? I don't know. But I think that when you look at when the CDC is recommending things, when you look at the movement of other countries on things that work, and then you look at the response of Canada and you see what they're suggesting, why don't we just disinfect and reuse masks? I can tell you 10 reasons why not to do that. That would be a terrible idea. And then the lag time in recommending a common sense approach that should have been approved and recommended in March, never mind April. And I mean, President Trump has tweeted out on March 23rd about this potential treatment, and the rest of the world has seen good results. Mr. Trump called Mr. Modi the Prime Minister of India, and made sure that he could get a lot of this drug to treat his country. I mean, and Canada is just dragging its feet and telling us, don't wear masks, it doesn't help. Okay, wear masks if you want to. How long do you think, how many studies do you think it will take to use this? Because this represents a path back to normalcy. If you know that you're going to have a course of 500 milligrams, 5 days, and zinc and a zinc chaser, right? Twice a day, that's a course of antibiotics. That makes this from a deadly disease that will overwhelm our healthcare system to something that you take a couple of drugs and everything's okay in 5 to 7 days, right? And hopefully you don't get that sick. And I don't mean to understate this, but the doctor is saying 100% of people that he's treated with this were very sick, and within 8 to 12 hours, they were symptom free. I mean, that changes the game on this. That means that our economy doesn't need to be closed. This needs to be studied. We don't need a vaccine if this is a relatively cheap, already tested medication. It seems insane. It seems like bad management to keep the economy closed if all of this is true, right? If this is even 100% effectiveness, it is unethical. It is not ethical to withhold from the control group. The control group is the group that is not allowed to have the medication. I've already explained that. I know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out canadapoly.com. Check out the CanadaReport.co, not the Canada Report, CanadaReport.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.